Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Monday, January the 12th, 2015, and here are our top stories.
Tonight, the Paris shooter's ties to the underwear bomber. Then, New York cops refuse to issue petty tickets. And who's behind the U.S. command attack? That's next on the Infowars Nightly News.
Why do the ISIS jackasses have Twitter accounts? Oh, because the Pentagon wants to be able to track what they're doing. Yeah, right.
Well, as we've been saying all along, it looks like 2015 is going to be the year of internet control, of trying to justify the surveillance state. They've been pushing for this, of course, with the Sony hack, but there's been many different instances. It's a multi-pronged attack. They want to use the FCC to come after the internet to assert control, regulation, taxation. They also want to establish intelligence sharing, which essentially will pretend that your information that you share with the corporation belongs equally to them as well as to you. So the corporation can turn it over to the government, and they can do it without any liability because they'll get that liability protection from the government. Now, the newly minted head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Burr from North Carolina, can hardly contain his glee to justify the surveillance state. Check this out.
Our intelligence folks, I can assure you, are scrubbing everything we can find.
Now, he says they're going to go back and look at the connections between these guys, and it is really kind of interesting. It's almost like some kind of a Dickens novel where all the characters are interrelated, as you find out, and we see that happening right now. We see that, speaking with CNN, a freelance journalist said that the underwear bomber lived at the same apartment as shooting suspect Saeed Kouachi prior to his failed airline bombing attempt in December of 2009. Now, at the end of the news tonight, we're going to play a special report, a flashback to the full expose of how the underwear bomber was a perfect false flag attack orchestrated by the government with a solution in hand that they presented the very next day, machines that had been built a long time before that, ready to roll out as this attack came out. I believe the same thing is happening here. I think that if you've got shooters and you know where they are, you know who they are, and you fail to stop them, yet you drop breadcrumbs that make it look like you instantly solve the crime, that is something that is being used to push this narrative that we need more of a surveillance state, that in spite of their failures, we need to double down, spend more money, spend more of our liberty in the vain attempt to try to get a secure state. The New York Daily News points out that the terrorist, Koulibaly, who was the shooter in the incident with the kosher deli, had met with former French President Nicolas Sarkozy in 2009, years before this murder spree. And he said he even had a publicity stunt. If you look down at the bottom of that article to pull that up, he says, "I don't know what I'm going to say to him." He was 27 at the time, but he said, "I'll start by saying hello." So this is someone who's not only had a long criminal record, but the day before the meeting, he even is interviewed by a Parisian newspaper. He says, "It's going to be a real encounter. It's impressive. Whether you like him or not, he's still the president." Yes, he's the president. And why wasn't there a security detail to stop him from meeting with the president, considering the fact they already had him on their list as being radicalized? He had a long criminal list. When Jay Leno interviewed Obama, he said the day before Obama came to the program, they showed up and they had a staff meeting, and the Secret Service came in and pointed to various people in the room and said, "Don't show up tomorrow, you don't show up tomorrow, you don't show up tomorrow." If they know what the person's background is, if they're doing due diligence, then that's exactly what they're going to do. Did they not know this guy's information, or is he maybe working for them? The Newsweek report says that a French gunman met Sarkozy in a crazy security blunder. And that's the question. Was it absolutely crazy, as they say? So consider the timeline. In 2002, this man is arrested for armed robbery. In 2005, 2006, he becomes friends with one of the two brothers, Sharif. They list him as becoming radicalized at that point. Then he meets with Sarkozy in 2009. Nothing suspicious in his background. They don't do a check. Even though he's giving interviews to the Parisian newspaper the day before, they don't check. Then 10 months later, after he meets with Sarkozy, he is then busted. Police find weapons cache in his room along with pictures of Islamic leaders. One of the fellows was planning an attack on the U.S. Embassy in Paris. Still, nothing happens to him. Then in 2013, he's given a sentence for planning a prison break, yet he serves no jail time then either. So the question is, are they giving this guy a pass out of pure incompetence? Are they giving him a pass because they're using him because he's a double agent somehow? Or are they giving him a pass because they want him to do something and they're laying back until the right time? Whether they are actually controlling these guys directly or whether or not they're letting them do this and then using it for their own political agenda, it's still a false flag. As Alex Jones pointed out yesterday, if you shake up a bag of black widow spiders, get them very angry, pour them in somebody's bed, you're not controlling those spiders anymore, but you pretty well know what they're going to do. But it gets even more suspicious. Look at this story that was on Infowars.com today. Police chief investigating Charlie Hebdo attack reportedly commits suicide. Now, the interesting thing is that this fellow who committed suicide with his own revolver in his office, he is the second in command. The third in command, almost a year ago, a little over a year ago, did exactly the same thing in Limoges. That's about 3.5 hours outside of Paris. He was there interviewing family members of people who had been killed. Was it a coincidence, or is that something that just adds more suspicion to it? Now, there's also an article where a French columnist writing for Voltaire Network asks what's really behind this. He says, who did order this? Was this something that was ordered by Anwar al-Awlaki, as they point out, or is this something that was ordered by someone else, some Western government or intelligence agency with another agenda? He points out that the mission of the commandos had no connection with jihadist technology. He said if they had been on a jihad, they would have destroyed first the archives of the newspaper on site after the model of their actions in North Africa and Levant. For jihadists, the first duty is to destroy the objects that they believe offend God and to punish the enemies of God. And he says, similarly, they would not have immediately retreated, running from the police without completing their mission. They would have rather have completed their mission and died on the spot than to leave those cartoons there. He said also, they wielded their weapons as expertly and fired advisedly. They were not dressed in the fashion of jihadists, but as military commandos. His belief is that this is a clash of civilizations, as he points out, designed by Tel Aviv and Washington, certainly by Western governments. It looks like this is something that suits their agenda that they've been working on for a very long time. But of course, they're trying to say that they're going to take the brave high ground and they're going to defend freedom of speech. Really? Was that what happened in the marches? Was that a march of political unity? Or were there political recriminations taken against their political opponents? Look at this story. Socialist Hollande bans right-wing nationalist party and challenger Le Pen from the Unity March. This is from the Gateway Pundit. They point out that Hollande banned the National Front Party leader Marine Le Pen from the Unity rally in Paris on Sunday. The French Nationalist Party, who wants to clamp down on immigration and won the elections last May, was banned from this march. Le Pen was furious that the party who came out on top of the European elections last May was excluded from the march. So there's definitely a political aspect even to that. They're not there for free speech. And certainly the whole idea that they're standing strong for free speech really comes down with an article that Paul Joseph Watson pointed out in his video earlier today, going back to January of 2009, because the previous French Prime Minister, Sarkozy, came after a Charlie Hebdo journalist who mocked his son. This was a French cartoonist who was put on trial for charges of anti-Semitism over a Sarkozy job. And again, remember that Charlie Hebdo had pointed out they'd been sued 13 times by the Roman Catholic Church. Only once, they said, by the Muslims. But if you criticize someone who is Jewish, you not only get charged criminally for anti-Semitism, but Charlie Hebdo fired the cartoonist. What was in this cartoon? Of course, this was an 80-year-old cartoonist who had worked for them for quite some time. He faced charges of, quote, inciting racial hatred for a column that he wrote in the satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. It ended with him being fired from the magazine. So what was in that cartoon? Well, it was about the engagement of the former Prime Minister Sarkozy's son, who was then 22 years old, to a Jewish heiress of an electronics goods chain. Commenting on the unfounded rumor that the president's son was planning to convert to Judaism, the cartoonist wrote, "He'll go a long way in life, that little lad." So that's what he said that qualified for charges of anti-Semitism. Charlie Hebdo, who say that they always support the absolute right of free speech, called on him to resign for that, to which he said, "I would rather castrate myself."
City of Austin tap water versus filtered City of Austin tap water.
I can taste dirt in it.
God knows what's in this.
This has an aftertaste.
Tastes like Austin water? Yeah, it does.
These people just sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the ProPure G2.0 filtration system.
High quality H2O.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, Monsanto's deadly pesticide, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
Yeah, it has that processed flavor to it.
The ProPure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances and many more, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water.
Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today. Use promo code WATER and save 10% off your ProPure purchase. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139.